Hello, everybody. How are you on this beautiful day? We have a really exciting program for you today, getting your songs placed on TV and film. So I want to welcome everybody, and once again, we apologize for the uh, session we tried last week, but we had some power issues, so those apparently have gone away. So we're excited to be here today. We've got a great program for you. We will be getting to questions toward the end. We're going to go for about an hour. I'm joined today by Aaron, who I'll introduce to you guys in just a minute, and Chelsea Ira, who's also here. Chelsea is going to be, say hello, Chelsea.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to be in the chat talking with you guys and gathering any questions that you have so that we can do a Q&A at the end.
So fire your questions into the chat as you see fit, and hang on. So I want you to stay to the end of the webinar. We're only going to go about an hour because we're gonna tell you about the 90-day music licensing challenge and give you a crack at getting into this very, very exciting opportunity. The 90-day licensing challenge is a program that Aaron came up with that we'll talk more about later, but basically it's going to give you 90 days of licensing leads with contact info sent to your inbox. These are publishers and supervisors looking to license music. The program also has one-on-one coaching with Aaron, hours of licensing training, and we have less than 100 seats left now, around 80 seats left. We'll talk more about this as we go, but please stick around to the end of the program. I'd like to introduce right now my friend Aaron Davison. Aaron, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. Dave, how are you? Thanks
Good.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, we're happy to have you. And everybody, Aaron is actually working out of the Dominican Republic right now. He's living the life of the internet entrepreneur down there in the sunshine. So the good news is he's down there in this beautiful territory, and the bad news is the power is not completely stable.
Hence the power issues last Friday, but we should be good to go today.
So what are you doing down there? You're recording some tracks?
Yeah, I came down here the first time in 2012 and sort of fell in love with the country. One of the great things about most of the work that I do is it's fairly mobile. I can do it pretty much from anywhere. So I came down here in 2012, really fell in love with the country, and since then have come down at least, I've spent about a month every year since then. So I'm down here in Santo Domingo in the capital. I'll be here until the middle of July. And I'm doing a lot of recording while I'm here. It's really cool. I'm actually working on a project for A&E right now, and there's a recording studio, and a friend of mine, someone I met last year when I was here, who has a recording studio, is about 2 blocks away from where I'm staying. So it works out really well.
Cool. So if you would, tell everybody on the program today kind of how you got started in music and got started in music licensing in particular.
Sure. So, as you know, Dave, I attended Berklee. I'm a Berklee alum. I was there in the mid '90s as a songwriting major, and when I was at Berklee, that was sort of the first time I got exposed to the concept of music licensing. And one of my songwriting teachers, actually Barbara Jordan, would come in and talk about different places she was pitching music. She had a publishing company that she had formed at the time, and so she would talk to us about all these projects and shows she was working on, like ENR and The Young and the Restless and All My Children, and all these different places she was pitching music. So that was really the first time I was sort of exposed to the concept of music licensing. I left Berklee. To be honest, I didn't think much about music licensing at the time. I was really more focused on playing in bands. You know, my dream and my goal when I was 19 or 20 was to form a rock band, and I don't know, become a rock star or something. You know, that was sort of the goal. So I left Berklee and I went back to Chicago, where I'm from. I formed a band. We were called URB, the Unidentified Rock Band. We were together about 4 years, and we were doing really well. We started opening up for some pretty big acts in the area. We were headlining clubs in Chicago for 400 or 500 people. Things were going really well, and then kind of seemingly overnight, the band broke up. Our singer left and moved to LA. Eventually, he settled in Nashville. The drummer left a couple of weeks later, and like pretty much overnight, this whole dream of mine kind of collapsed. And it was really, really frustrating and very disenchanting, because I had spent so much time investing into this dream that was really dependent on three other people, you know, my bandmates. So when my band broke up, that was really the point at which I started looking into licensing again, and ended up contacting my former teacher, started licensing some tracks through her, and really around like 2000, 2001, got more heavily involved in licensing music.
Well, you've gotten a lot of great placements yourself, and you've gotten a lot of great placements for your students. I'd like to bring up a picture and show everybody. Why don't you talk a little bit about the placements that you've gotten and placements you've gotten for your students?
Sure, absolutely. So over the years, I've had a lot of different placements. In the beginning, like in 2002 through 2004, I was doing a lot of daytime television work. My publisher was doing a lot of soap opera stuff. So places like All My Children, The Young and the Restless, One Life to Live. I've done stuff for Fox Sports, A&E, a lot of different TV shows over the years. And then, you know, around 2007, when I launched my website, howtolicenseyourmusic.com, since then I've been working with other artists, and we've had placements sort of all over the map. But as you can see, some of the brands and networks we have up on the screen: MTV, Discovery, VH1, Showtime, Degrassi, Fuse, Nickelodeon, a lot of different placements. And these are the placements that I know about. I'm pretty sure there's probably, you know, people that take my courses that I work with that don't necessarily get back to me. But over the years, I've helped, you know, probably hundreds of artists at this point kind of get started in this business. So it's been very exciting.
Well, you certainly have. So today we're going to go over how to license your music and discovering what publishers are looking for in the songs that they license. You're going to learn how to get licensing opportunities sent straight to your email inbox. I think that's pretty amazing. Aaron's going to share some easy tricks to make your songs more licensable, because it's not just the pitch, and he'll go more into that later. And then you're going to find out more about the licensing challenge. So, with no further ado, Aaron, everybody, he is the real deal, and let's dive in and start talking about how can people license their music and get placement in film and TV and elsewhere. What do they need to do?
Sure, absolutely. So I think there's a few things to kind of take into consideration. Number one is obviously the songs that you're writing and that you're pitching. And I know we're going to talk a little more later in the presentation, Dave, about things writers can do in terms of preparing their tracks and make sure that they're submitting tracks that are actually sort of on target for licensing in general. But assuming that they're writing music that is ready to be pitched, you know, assuming the music meets the production standards that it needs to meet, assuming that music is ready, it's, as I'm sure you know, Dave, it's all about networking. It truly is about connecting with people that license music. There's a variety of ways to do that, but one of the things that I really teach in my programs, and one of the things that I stress in the 90-Day Music Licensing Challenge, is simply taking action every single day. And it sounds so utterly simple, but I would encourage people listening to this to think back to the previous 90 days and ask yourself, how many shots did you really take? How many people did you actually connect with? There are hundreds, if not thousands, of people licensing music. There are tons of publishers and supervisors and libraries. There's a lot of different avenues to go about licensing your music. But what I do in my program, the 90-day challenge, is I really encourage writers every day, once a day, for 90 days to connect with somebody licensing music, and I sort of lay out, a list of people that are doing that. But it's as simple as that, but it's also, it's about taking action. So I think the first step, assuming your music is ready, you can't be pitching music that's not licensable. Assuming it is, taking action every single day, getting on the phone, networking, sending emails. If you're in a major music city like LA or New York or Nashville, there are conferences and seminars you can go to, and it's really about building a network of relationships of people working in the business. So that's sort of the short answer. There's obviously a lot more that goes into that I get into in the program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I would concur. Having worked with a lot of writers, producers, as well as performers, a lot of the business is all about networking, but it's especially true if you're trying to license your music, if you're trying to get to music supervisors, if you're trying to create a relationship with a music publisher. Aaron, you mentioned publishers, music supervisors, and libraries. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the differences between the three and what they would be looking for?
Sure. So obviously the sort of final decision in terms of what songs are licensed into projects are made by music supervisors. Those are obviously the people that are selecting music ultimately. I've had personally more success licensing music through publishers than I have directly through supervisors. Like I said at the beginning of this presentation, my first sort of introduction to licensing was through my songwriting teacher, Barbara Jordan, who was a music publisher. And so, in general, there isn't like one way to go about licensing music, but I think in general, if you're new to this, it's a lot easier to start with music publishers because they tend to have relationships directly with music supervisors, and in a lot of cases they have relationships they've established over many years. If a publisher has been around 10 or 20 years, that's a decade or two of networking and connecting with people. So I've licensed a lot of music through publishers. Over the last couple years, I've gotten more involved in working directly with music supervisors through a couple new connections that I've made. But the difference is obviously if you're working with a music publisher, you're sharing your publishing royalties with your publisher. It tends to be sort of a 50-50 split. So if you license a track through a publisher, you're normally splitting the sync fee and you're giving them the publishing royalty. You keep your writer's royalty, so it works out to be about 50-50. With that said, supervisors are people like anybody else, and anybody can approach music supervisors, but in my experience, it's a little easier to start via music publishers.
Okay, and you mentioned libraries as well. What's been your experience with music libraries?
So music libraries, I sort of, like at this point, libraries and publishers are very, very similar in the sense that they both have a catalog of music that they represent. Sort of the distinction that I make between publishers and libraries is that a true publisher, like a traditional publisher, handles all of the administrative work. From registering your titles with your PRO to all of the negotiating in terms of how much the sync fee is and so on and so forth. They're very similar. Some libraries will actually take a smaller percentage of publishing income, and there are some libraries that actually don't touch publishing at all. They just take the sync fee or a portion of it. So that's sort of the difference. There's a lot of variables and there's different deals out there, but in general they're essentially doing the same thing, but a publisher really is more hands-on and really does everything, all the paperwork and administrative work.
Okay. So what we've seen in our programs and with working with literally thousands of musicians around the world is, number one, it's a big networking game, but number two, it usually pays off to do the research to figure out what people are looking for. And I know that's a big part of your program. Can you talk a little bit about, how do you find out what publishers or music supervisors are looking for? How do you go about doing that?
Sure. I mean, the beautiful thing about the time we live in, Dave, is the internet, right? And all the information is very, very accessible. So let's start with publishers. So in terms of publishers, what I recommend is don't. It's a waste of your time, and it's a waste of the recipient's time for you to blindly email, hundreds or thousands of people. What I recommend in terms of publishers is start by checking out their website, look at where they're placing music, listen to music they're placing, try to get a sense of what type of music they work with. It's pretty easy to do. Most publishers, most established publishers, will have samples of music right on their website. You can check out, what kind of artists they're placing, where they're placing music, and try to get a sense of whether or not your music fits in to the kind of music they're working with. So that's step one in terms of publishers. In terms of supervisors, different TV shows, and this is definitely sort of a more advanced way to approach licensing, but different TV shows have different musical sensibilities, and if you're really serious about licensing, what I recommend is listen to TV shows, study what kind of music is being licensed, figure out, there's a lot of sort of different niches under the umbrella of music licensing. Within the music licensing niche, there's advertising, there's production music, there's stock music, there's music that's used on primetime television shows. So I think a good first step is to look at the music you're making and try to figure out where it sort of fits into the grand scheme of things. Sometimes it's a pretty obvious answer, and other times it's not, and you really have to sort of maybe go back to the drawing board. But I know that's sort of a long-winded answer, but hopefully that kind of answers your question.
So you're saying to check out their sites, see what other music they are licensing, what it sounds like, how yours might fit in. Are there any other resources you can talk about where you could find out maybe what movies are being worked on, or what television shows are being worked on, or what are the advertisers creating, and how can you plug into that?
Sure. Well, I mean, IMDb is a great one. You can find out what projects are in production. Like, one of the nice things about what I'm doing at this point, I don't know if you know this, Dave, but I also run a music marketing company called musicpitchers.com. It's sort of a side project of mine. And what we do for this company is I have an assistant who works for me full-time, and we're constantly reaching out to publishers and supervisors and really just anyone in the licensing business. And once you sort of develop a relationship with these people, they'll send you briefs. So I get briefs, several times a week about specific projects. I just pitched one last week for Netflix for a new series that they're producing. Like I said at the beginning of this, I'm working on some stuff for A&E. So I think the easiest way is to actually develop relationships with people. So once you're sort of in the know, in the loop, they'll tell you. But short of that, just using the internet, using IMDb, resources like that are, you can sort of figure out what projects are in development, and usually you can figure out who the supervisor is pretty easily and contact them and see if they're interested in getting outside music.
All right, cool. So there's been a number of questions, both for people who signed up on the Reg page and also in the chat here, in terms of requirements for music that you're writing and you're producing. Can you talk about the kind of music that gets licensed? And if you're a writer, producer, what should you be thinking about when you're trying to create music to be licensed, as opposed to a song to put on your record?
Sure, absolutely. I want to pull up a slide, actually, and I have a few bullet points that I want to go over. So let me pull up the first one here, Dave. So let me see. I have this open on my end, but for some reason when I go to share it, it's not popping up. Let me close this and try it again.
If you can't show the slide, just tell us what's on there.
Yeah, let me. Yeah, for some reason it's not popping up. Yeah, let me just go over a few points. So I've prepared some bullet points to sort of talk about what supervisors and publishers are looking for in general. And all I can really do, Dave, is generalize because there's so many different. Like a question I get a lot is, what are music supervisors looking for? And it's a hard question to give sort of a one-size-fits-all answer to, because what they're looking for, it really varies from project to project. They're looking for the perfect song to fit whatever scene they're syncing music to, is sort of the big answer to that question. But with that said, there's some things that I want people to think about. So if you think about how sort of the context in which music is used for licensing, it's normally, and there are exceptions to this, but normally it's 30 seconds of a song or 60 seconds. It's not the entire song, right? So music that's used in licensing is used to enhance and support whatever the scene is it's being licensed into. So in terms of arrangement, there are a few things to think about. One is no long intros. You don't want to have long, meandering intros that take forever to develop. You want to develop ideas fairly quickly, so kind of getting to the point of the song pretty quickly. I mean, think of just a good pop song, like a good 3-minute pop song, and this is sort of the arrangement that you want for your songs that you're pitching to licensing opportunities. Really strong hooks. You want to grab the listener. Again, you don't necessarily have 3 or 4 minutes entirely to pull listeners in, so you really want to grab them as quickly as possible. I recommend avoiding long guitar solos, unless you're specifically being asked to do like an 80s style Van Halen track or something. This isn't really the place to do that. And the last point was, this is something that a lot of writers aren't aware of, but no fade outs. You want your songs to end abruptly, because it's easier to, if you have a fade out, it's kind of harder to cut that to a scene. So avoid fade outs. But in general, I guess if I can kind of sum up the idea of arranging your songs is develop your songs quickly, get to the point, and have really strong hooks. And again, that's a generalization, but in general, those types of songs work better.
Okay. So, to follow on that line of thinking, would you suggest that people compose specifically for licensing opportunities, so creating 30, 60, 90-second clips, as opposed to banging out whole songs and then hoping that they'll extract from that? Should you be thinking that way and presenting that way, or should you be presenting whole songs to people?
Well, all of the songs that I've licensed over the years have been whole songs. There's sort of a niche within music licensing called production music, where it's much more common to do. And I'm actually working on some stuff right now where we're doing like 90-second cues and 60-second cues. That's a little different. That's more comes up more often for like background music and production music, where they're just looking for sort of an instrumental cue to fit in the background. You can approach it either way. I mean, if you're doing vocal music, if you're an artist and you're presenting yourself as an artist, then I don't think it makes a lot of sense to do that. I think if you're an artist and you want to be an artist, write songs, write the songs that you're inspired to write. But if you're really serious about licensing, I think it's a good idea to think about sort of how music is used. And apart from like 30-second or 60-second cues, I want to talk about one other point, Dave, which is the idea of writing a song specifically for licensing versus just writing whatever you feel like writing. And I get that question a lot. Which approach should you take? And the way I would answer the question is, I think you should do whatever you're inspired to do. But if you really want to license your music, if you're really, if it's something you're actively trying to do, then of course think about whether or not your songs work in the context of licensing. Like a question that, like one of the publishers I work with primarily started asking me this question a couple years ago. I would submit music to her, And sometimes the songs would be like she would like the songs, but she would be like, Aaron, I don't know. She would be like, where do you see this fitting? Like where would this song work? And it was a question that had never really been presented to me by anybody I had worked with, but it's a totally logical question, because if you don't know where your songs fit, if you don't know the mood and the style, if you don't know how that sort of works logically in the context of a TV show or a film or an ad, there's a good chance that maybe your publisher or whoever you're working with doesn't know either. So I think it's really good to think about how things like style, mood, and the lyrics all sort of dictate the types of scenes your music could potentially be used in. So a couple, and again, I really wanted to bring up this bullet. Let me try one more time, Dave, to share. Yeah, for some reason it's still not popping up. I've got them opened up. Well, anyways, I'll just read them off. So in terms of style and mood, think about the style of music you're writing and where it would potentially fit. So, and I have a couple sort of hypothetical examples. One example is, let's say you have a 70s classic rock song, or a song that has sort of a 70s classic rock vibe, and the subject matter is about starting over, like starting over in terms of relationships. Think like Freebird. So you have a song like this, and I think what a lot of writers do is they write these songs and they just send them out there. They pitch them wherever they can, and they hope that it works somewhere. So, but I think it's really helpful to think about, where would a song like that actually work? That song might work, for example, in a scene with a 50-year-old character going through a divorce, right? So that's a kind of a limited opportunity, in terms of, it would really have to be the right scene at the right time. Another example is, let's say you have sort of a modern pop song a la Katy Perry, Beyonce, about female independence and empowerment. This might be, there might be more opportunities for a song like this. This might work in a scene with a female millennial who is graduating college and entering the workforce. And these are just hypothetical examples. But the point of this exercise is, when you're... Oh, here, actually, you know what, Dave? Let me pull this up. Now I can see it for some reason. Do you guys see that?
Yeah, great.
Okay, so I was discussing example 2 right here.
Yeah.
Right? So the idea is to really think about how the mood, style, and lyrics of your tracks affect where your music will potentially be used. In general, you want to write about universal topics that are broad. Don't limit yourself by writing about obscure styles and obscure topics. And so, to get back to the question of whether or not you should just write whatever you feel like writing versus trying to write specifically for licensing, I think if you're happening to write songs that are kind of universal and you're writing about themes like relationships and starting over, then you probably already have a lot of songs that will work for licensing. But if you're not, it's really helpful to think about how music is used in the context of licensing.
Okay. And do you want to go back to your first set of bullets and just share those with folks, because they're asking for that? If you
absolutely. Let me pull up the first one. Yeah, for some reason they're all here. They weren't before. So here's the first one. So this is the slide about arrangement. And again, these are generalizations. These aren't. There's always exceptions, and you'll always find examples of music being licensed that don't fit this criteria. But in general, you should approach your arrangements this way. So no long intros. Develop your ideas quickly. Really strong hooks. That's a big one, and especially for newer TV shows. You really want big. You really want to pull the listener in. So, I've submitted songs in the past that I thought were great songs, that even my publisher agreed, like, yeah, this is a really good song, but it just doesn't have the right hook, so that will limit you. And again, no long guitar solos, no fade outs.
Okay.
Can I switch to? There's one more slide that we missed. Can I pull that up, Dave?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna. People are asking for, are there any tips and tricks to creating music that is going to be more licensable than others? Are there any little
Sure.
tidbits or secrets you can share with us?
Sure. Let me pull up. This is the one that we kind of missed, but this is a big one. Subject matter, lyrics. Again, think about how songs are used in the context of licensing. They're used to support the story and the scene, wherever the song is being used. So obviously TV shows and films tend to have sort of universal themes. If you think about what most movies and most TV shows are about, they're about relationships. They're about people. So universal themes supporting those topics work best. Love songs, breakup songs, songs about friendship, songs about starting over, songs about overcoming obstacles, songs about adventure, freedom, etc. And again, I would add, keep it kind of broad. You don't one of the things you want to avoid when you're pitching songs is pitching songs that are too specific, right? So if you have a song about a girl named Katie from Montana and you're referencing these things in the lyrics, that'll work if there happens to be a film or a TV show about a girl named Katie from Montana, but what are the chances of that happening? So I would say keep your subject matter broad enough and universal enough that it potentially fits a lot of different scenes.
Okay, another question we get often is, should you be solely focused on licensing your own original compositions, or should you also be looking at any covers that you do particularly well as candidates for licensing? What's your take on that?
Good question. I actually just a couple weeks ago, I'm sort of in the middle of helping one of the artists I work with negotiate a deal for a cover of the Daft Punk song "Get Lucky." To be honest, I don't have nearly as much experience licensing cover songs. It can absolutely be done, and it's a little more complex in terms of getting the publishing and clearance. I mean, yeah, it's definitely a niche. There's definitely a market for it. I would say, though, in general, I wouldn't do a bunch of cover songs and record them hoping to get them licensed. I would wait for specific opportunities, because there's from time to time my publisher will come to me with specific pitches that she's working on, and I know that if I do a song on her request, she's going to handle all the clearance and everything will be taken care of. So I would say, yeah, there's definitely a market for it, but I wouldn't approach it randomly. I would wait for the project to come up and do something on upon request.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to get to some question and answer in just a second here. But I want to ask you guys, why did you really sign up for this webinar? Clearly you want to be able to get your music licensed, and maybe you want to get on film or TV, but you don't feel like you have the connections or the information to make that happen. And that's part of what we're trying to do today, is to show you a path. You want to know which songs are the best to submit for licensing instead of just guessing. And we've gotten some questions about instrumental versus vocal tracks. We'll talk more about that. Everybody on this webinar today is looking to unlock revenue through licensing. And Aaron is sharing some great ideas with us. But I want to, before we get to the Q&A, I want to give you an opportunity to take the 90-day music licensing challenge and put what you're learning here today and what you would learn from the program into practice to get your music on film or TV. So the 90-day challenge, what is that? It's really, the culmination of Aaron's experience for 14 years of licensing his own music, the connections that he's developed, that he's researched and verified for you, and he knows what people are looking for so that you can send your music to key licensing decision makers who are actually going to be expecting your submissions. So the program is every day for 90 days you're going to get a new licensing lead sent to your email inbox that you can follow through and submit your music to. And Aaron's also going to throw in 2 half-hour coaching calls with you at the beginning and the end of the 90 days, and a lot of lessons in between to help you make the most of those leads and those opportunities. So this is a chance to commit for a 3-month period and see if you can really get your licensing off the ground. You know, I think that the coolest thing about the licensing challenge is just how accessible it is. I mean, Aaron's had musicians who were just literally just breaking into licensing, and experienced songwriters, on the other hand, who have already gotten big placements go through the program, and everybody gets something out of this. That's why we're doing this webinar, and that's why we're making this offer to you guys. So I want you to have the opportunity to get into one of the few spots available in this 90-day challenge. There's only 100 spots. It's beginning to fill up. Aaron could take 100 people. And tomorrow we're going to open this up to the public. So if you're interested right now, today, this is a good chance to get in. The coaching calls are going to be scheduled on a first-come, first-served basis. So if you're in early, you're going to get a chance to talk to Aaron early, both before you go through the program and after you go through the program. Normally this goes for 147. We're making it available for just 97. You can click the link on the screen, or it's newartistmodel.com/90day. You're going to get 90 licensing leads. 90. That's 90 more than you have right now. You're going to get 2 half-hour phone consultations with Aaron, plus unlimited email and Facebook coaching, a whole bunch of videos, and a very cool submission spreadsheet to keep track of what you're doing. You're going to get 90 balls in the air. You're going to want to keep track of that. And Aaron's got even more stuff for you if you want to sign up. We got 3 extra licensing courses: Mystery of Mastering Solved, how to get your songs ready to be submitted, how to produce music that'll get licensed, same idea, and Advanced Music Licensing Strategies. Yeah. All of this plus the 90-day challenge, and you know what? He's even got more for you. But you know, I know $97 might seem like a lot of money, and I want you to think about it this way. It's a little more than $1 a lead, and it's 90 leads that you don't have right now, and just one of these could potentially make you a lot more money from licensing than you've ever seen before. And that's not taking into account the coaching and the training that you're going to get by working with Aaron. You'd pay a lot more for some of the music licensing directories that are out there. And those are going to be cold leads. They're not going to be leads that are expecting submissions from you. And that's why I think this program is really, really cool. I mean, when you want to hear your music on TV or in a movie, everybody wants that. So, you know, I want you to challenge yourself and take the leap and see how many connections and licensing opportunities you can unlock for yourself. Take the 90-day challenge. Here's some feedback from folks that have gone through Aaron's program. I mean, you could read it for yourself. The licensing placements that you can get can lead to growth in other parts of your career, like streaming music and other points of distribution. So this is a big networking opportunity on one hand, and it can pay benefits in other ways in your career. Here's another one. The leads that you can get are yours, and they're yours to use as you move ahead. And it may not help you instantly, but you're going to get 90 leads that you can work on, and you can nurture those relationships over time. And here's one more. You know, how much would a TV placement be worth to you into your career? What would happen if you were able to score that? I know everybody's looking for that. So as I said, tomorrow we're going to open it up to the whole list. This is going to sell out. This is going to fill up. It's first come, first serve. So if you're interested, I would suggest going for it right away. Aaron, I know you have some other bonuses that you just told me about when we started talking on the webinar. You want to tell us what those are?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me pull up one more document. So I was really frustrated last Friday when we tried to do this and the power went out. Hang on one second. So I was really frustrated, and here it is. I called my producer. So my producer is a guy named Gary Gray, based in LA. I've worked with him for the last couple years, and we've worked a lot together. He's collaborated on a couple different courses with me, and he's produced all my music for the last 2 years or so. So I called Gary because I was so bummed about what happened with our webinar, and I'm like, Gary, this is big opportunity, and I really wanted this to go well. And so he really wanted to help me today to make this successful. So if you sign up by Wednesday, by the 29th, Gary is offering to also throw in a bonus package. He's going to do a 30-minute free Skype consultation with everybody covering music production, specifically as it relates to music licensing, because producing music for licensing is a little bit different. There's some things that you really have to kind of keep into consideration. Gary has a lot of experience with licensing. We're working on a project right now together for A&E. He's buddies with Quincy Jones. He's a really, really down-to-earth, awesome guy. So that's the first thing he's willing to do. Number two, he's going to throw in a free, thorough, written critique. Let me space this out so you can see this a little better. So he's going to critique your track, one of your tracks, for free, and just kind of give you feedback in terms of how your production sort of stacks up against other songs that are being pitched. Production, we didn't really talk a lot about production today, but music production is really, really critical for licensing. Your music has to be produced up to broadcast quality standards. So Gary will give you a free critique of one of your tracks. And finally, number three, he will master one of your tracks for free. So that was really cool of Gary to offer that, and I guarantee you he's going to be a really big asset to you as well.
Fantastic. That's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff.
Let's start answering some questions. I'm going to ask Chelsea if you wouldn't mind queuing up the questions and feeding them to us.
Yep, so we've got a bunch of questions here. Some of them relate directly to your challenge, Aaron, and some of them are just licensing in general. Do you have a preference about which ones we start with?
No, not really. Whatever. Why don't you just shoot them off in the order that you have them?
Okay, so let's just go for a few about the licensing challenge since we're kind of on that note.
Sure.
So a big one that people are asking is what's the difference between sort of the licensing leads that you send and places like Taxi that lists leads or something like that?
Yeah, so I have to be really careful in how I answer this question. I mean, here's the biggest difference in terms of Taxi. The leads that they're giving you are, like when you join Taxi, they give you leads and opportunities, but when you submit your music, you're actually submitting it to Taxi, and then they screen your music, and if they think it's good enough, they will forward your music on to said opportunity. So I guess the biggest difference for this program is that I'm giving you leads directly to the source, directly to the publishers and supervisors that make decisions. And in general, like, I get asked a lot of questions about services like that, and I can't really talk specifically about different services, but I would just tell you in general, go directly to, like why there's so many obstacles in getting your music licensed already. Why create another middleman? I would say go directly to whoever it is that is licensing music. So these leads are directly to the company, so, and there's no extra fees or anything like that. You're just submitting your music directly to people that actually license music.
I think that's a huge difference. I mean, the number one thing that you all want to do, if you're part of any of my programs, you hear this all the time, is you want to build your network of relationships directly and nurture those, because they're not all going to pay benefit right away. It might take a month, a year, it might take 3 years. So to be able to go direct to a bunch of publishers and supervisors is just priceless. What else you got, Chelsea?
Yeah, so a lot of people were asking, like, how many songs they need to be able to sign up to your program. Like, where in their career should they be to kind of make the most of the 90-day challenge?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, there's no sort of perfect answer to this. I literally started with one song. So like when I started licensing my music in 2002, I was in kind of like a jam band, a la Fish, Dave Matthews, kind of that style of music, and I had a bunch of tracks in that genre, which totally don't work for most licensing opportunities. And so I started submitting songs to the person who ended up becoming my first publisher, and she was like, "These are cool, but I have absolutely no place to pitch these." So I went into the studio, I recorded one song, sort of in the vein of, I don't know, John Mayer, kind of like a pop rock song. I sent her that song, and luckily it worked, and within like 3 or 4 weeks it was on The Young and the Restless on national TV. So to answer the question, I think it's a good idea to have a few songs. In general, the more you pursue licensing, you want to grow a body of work. You want to have a catalog. It's just logical. The more songs you have, the more potential placements you're going to be a good fit for. I would say, though, for this program, if you have 2 or 3 songs that you feel really good about, that's enough to get the ball rolling, and from there you can grow your catalog over time.
Chelsea, grab another question. I'm gonna pull one that we got from the sign-up form. I've gotten a few different variations of this question, and it's how do we know if we're ready or not? Should we get somebody to critique our songs ahead of time? Should we wait until we've got a body of work? We've gone through all these different companies trying to get placements, but even after submitting, we don't get our phone calls returned. We have a lot of questions like that, and the reason that I got together with Aaron and that we're presenting this to you guys today is this is a chance to get in front of 90 people that are looking to license music. They're not going to give you hypothetical feedback. They're either going to license your songs or they're going to tell you why they're not going to license or pass. This is, you're out in the real world and you're dealing with real production deadlines and real publishers and real supervisors. That's the kind of feedback that you want to get. Okay, so don't pay somebody to tell you whether your music is good or not. Put it out in front of the marketplace that's ready to license songs. They're looking for stuff. They have production deadlines. So play the real game. Don't be shy. Chelsea?
So we're getting a lot of comments about how the audio jumped back or something, and they're saying that refreshing isn't helping. I'm not sure if there's anything we can do about that.
Don't know. I don't know, but let's keep going. We've got about 10 more minutes.
Okay, cool. Well, a big question that we got a lot is sort of the question about publisher versus no publisher. Can you license your music without a publisher? Can you talk on that for a little bit, Aaron?
Sure. Yeah, you can license the music without a publisher. This program, I really focus on publishers and libraries more than supervisors, and the reason is very simple, because when you're pitching music to supervisors, it really has to be a specific pitch relevant to whatever they're working on. So you could contact a supervisor, maybe they're in between projects, or maybe they're working on a very specific project. So I really emphasize publishers because they're working with multiple supervisors, and they might love your music today but have no need for it, but maybe 3 months from now or six months from now they do. So you really want to build up a network of people that are representing and pitching your music, and it's a question I always get. Should I go through a publisher or be my own publisher? I think you should do both is sort of how I answer that question. I think you should build up as big of a network as possible. If you have supervisors that you're developing relationships with, great. And I do include some of those in this program, but just for sort of to make it more relevant to everybody who signs up, I tend to focus more on publishers because it's just easier to start that way.
So in case you guys missed the answer to the question about should I wait or should I submit music to folks to be critiqued ahead of time, and the answer was very simple: is don't wait and don't necessarily go through a middleman or somebody that you're paying to give you feedback. Go right out to the market. The market is going to tell you whether you're ready or not. And if somebody is disconnected from the actual licensing process and they tell you your songs are good or not good, it's almost irrelevant compared to somebody that's looking to license a track and they either want your track or they don't. So go out into the marketplace. That was the section that you guys missed. So Chelsea, more questions. We got about 7 minutes.
All right, we got a fair amount of questions about instrumental music and sort of whether these tips will work for that or the best practices around instrumental music and licensing that.
Okay.
Yeah, so instrumental music versus vocal music. Absolutely, the program is relevant to both. A couple things that I want to say. One is if you're doing vocal tracks, it's a really, I don't think I mentioned this before, but it's a really good idea to do an instrumental, to have an instrumental version available at all times, because sometimes you'll send a track to a publisher or supervisor, they like the track, but they don't want the vocals, they just want the instrumental version. Here's sort of the biggest difference, though, in general, between instrumental and vocal music. Instrumental music, I tend to think of it as kind of quote-unquote production music. It tends to be used more as background music, and it's not usually as prominently as placed. Sometimes there's exceptions to that. So what does that mean for writers? It means essentially that instrumental music doesn't tend to pay as much as vocal music. With that said, though, the writers that I know that do really well with production music and instrumental music do a lot of it because it's easier to create. You can create an instrumental cue much more easily than you can a full vocal production with lyrics and vocals. So there's a market for both instrumental and vocal music, and most libraries, most of the leads in the program work with both. Some kind of specialize more in one or the other, but most places work with both instrumental and vocal music.
Great. How about video games? We've gotten a couple of questions about submitting music to video game producers or companies. What's your advice on that?
Well, to be totally honest, I don't have nearly as much experience with video games as I do with TV and film. I mention it, I talk a little bit about it in some of my programs, just sort of theoretically. It's not really an area of expertise for me, to be honest, but with that said, I think the idea in terms of how to get started is the same, in that you contact the video game company and find out who the music contact person is. But to be honest, I kind of touch on it, but it's not really something this program focuses on.
Okay, fair enough. Chelsea, got time for 2-3 more questions.
Okay, hold on. A lot of people were asking whether you can submit your music multiple times to different people, or kind of what the rules are around that. Like if you have CD Baby Pro, they will try to find or do something with publishing in that service. So can you be with CD Baby Pro and also kind of pursue your own leads directly or work with a publishing company?
Yeah, sure. The only situation in which you wouldn't be able to do that is if you're signed exclusively with a publisher. And I get into this in the program and sort of break down the pros and cons. For example, I have a publisher where I have certain tracks exclusive to this particular publisher. If you do that, then obviously you can't continue to shop those tracks. They're exclusively represented by whoever you're signing with. Most of the leads in this program are non-exclusive, and I really emphasize that for, obviously, the whole kind of point of doing this is to connect with a lot of different people. But there are some companies that really prefer exclusivity for the obvious reason that, if you're a publisher and you have a catalog that you're representing, you want to kind of have a unique catalog. If everybody has the exact same music, then the marketplace becomes a little diluted. So it's kind of a big topic. It's kind of a complicated topic. It's one of the things I go over in consultations a lot with people. But again, there's not like a one-size-fits-all answer to this. You can do exclusive deals and non-exclusive deals if you're working with different tracks. So what I often recommend is maybe have a couple tracks exclusive to one publisher if they're a really established publisher, and have other tracks that you shop non-exclusively. I hope I answered the question.
I think you did. So everyone, thank you for coming. I want you to take advantage of this offer if you can. newartistmodel.com/90day. You get the 90-day challenge for $97. We've had a whole bunch of people sign up during the webinar. Thank you very much. If you sign up now, you're going to get the coaching calls that we talked about. If your questions have not been answered, you're going to get a chance to ask Aaron any question you want specific to your music. So don't miss that opportunity. This offer closes on Friday. The first lead goes out on Friday. And if you're in, you're going to get 90 connections with publishers and supervisors that you don't have right now. And if you miss it, you're going to miss it. So take advantage. Thank you very much, Aaron, for taking time out of your recording down there and sharing this with everybody. Thank you, everybody, for coming. If you have any questions, sign up for the program. You can ask Aaron anything that you want. Aaron, any final thoughts?
No, I just want to say thanks, Dave and Chelsea, for doing this. This was a lot of fun. I'm so glad that we didn't have any major technical issues today. But also just let people know if they've signed up during this, as soon as we log off, I'll go through and email everybody a confirmation. So I look forward to working with everybody who signs up.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron. Thanks, everybody, for coming. We'll see you next time, and have a great day.